Welcome to the Passion of Entrepreneurship. Every weekday in June, I'm interviewing an amazing entrepreneur, business owner to explore what it is that drives them to run their own business, to do what they're passionate about, and how they get through their challenges. And my pleasure today to have a dear friend from my fellow CAPS Association, Gair Maxwell. Who welcome, Gair.
Well, it's great to be on board here. And I must confess, it's a little intimidating when you know
Really?
you're going one-on-one with a bona fide rocket scientist. I mean, how many times have you heard people at different situations socially or in business express, well, geez, it's not rocket science, which obviously puts the rocket scientist like you are, Ravi, on a pedestal that very few mere mortals can ever hope to attain.
Well, Gair, let me just tell you, this is not rocket science, and you can trust me because I am a rocket scientist.
A rocket scientist, yes.
So all these other people, they say it, but it's just fluff. You can trust me.
Well, I'm counting on you, my friend, because I have no idea exactly where we're going on this journey so we're on Facebook. Where else are we? And YouTube.
Yes.
All at the same time.
All at the same time. Don't you love the world today?
Oh, I can't get enough of this world. So right now I should be able to see it on my feed. Is that right?
Yes, you should. Yes, because you shared this post, correct?
Right.
Absolutely. It should be right there.
It should be right there.
Yeah.
Playing on my phone.
Yes. Yeah. So
okay.
If you want to hear yourself, that's fine.
No. I'm just curious because this is first time with a platform called StreamYard. So I'm just curious as to how it's all working.
Yeah. Oh, it's a wonderful platform. Lets us do a lot of things. So, Gair, moving into this whole thing, you didn't start out as an entrepreneur, right? You started out with a job for quite a while. You had a full career in broadcast.
Totally, yeah. I was the furthest thing from an entrepreneur. I was a lifelong. If you want to talk entrepreneurial journey,
yeah,
I was a lifelong employee, and 20 years. So I got paid very steady Eddie, 15th and 30th. I mean, yes, I had this high profile gig as broadcast journalist on radio and television stations in different parts of the country. But at the end of the day, you're still an employee getting paid to do a job and to, show up on time and do all those wonderful things. That being said, I did have one flirtation with entrepreneurship back in the early 1990s. So it was midway through the broadcasting career. And some partners and I got involved in a franchise operation. And within a year, this franchise operation went bankrupt. And it was a very, very painful experience. And we were certainly I can't speak for my partners, but I was under the illusion that you talk about the Grand Delusion, which I think was an album from Styx.
Awesome album.
Yeah. Miss America was on that album. But anyway, but my point is that I was under the illusion that, well, you turn the key, you open the door, it just works. It's a franchise. And what an experience. What a crash course. Here's what I can share with you. The single biggest lesson from that world, that my own personal experience, was collectively, my two partners and I lost, between the three of us, over $140,000. And the thing I'm most proud of is that we paid every nickel back. No one was left holding the bag. And I learned an awful lot about what I never wanted to do again in business. In fact, I swore I would never get into business again. I learned it's business, the world of business and entrepreneurship is like a lot of things. It's a lot harder than it looks.
And so you said, I'm never doing this.
Never going to do this again. Ever again. And then, and then as fate would have it, everything changed in 1999 when the broadcasting career came to an end, and this other opportunity presented itself. And I think, Ravi, when it gets right down to it, because it wasn't a partnership and I was basically just betting the farm on myself, and it was something I believed in, I thought I'll make that bet and never look back.
So you retired from your career in broadcasting?
No,
right?
no. I wish I could say that. Ravi, are you kidding me? May 21st, 1999.
Oh, he knows the date. What time was it?
Not only the date, I can tell you it was 12:52 p.m. in the afternoon on a Friday. I had just finished reading the news, weather, and sports on CFQM radio in Moncton, New Brunswick, and I was called into the office, and a 20-year career was terminated in a 2-sentence letter on company letterhead. And right away, it's over. It's done, and you're plunged into the bad movie right away. And so, and I still don't know where did the cardboard box come from, but there's a cardboard box, and you're putting your coffee cups and your trinkets and your mementos and your family photos. And within 15, 20 minutes, you're out in the parking lot, and you're never, ever, ever going to go back into that building again. And within a week or so, I was actually at the unemployment office. So it's personal humiliation, a lot of shame, and a lot of terrible feelings. And then you go home, and later that day, there's the story of your firing plastered on the front page of the only paper in the 2-station town. So now you've got your name and face dragged into the mud, so to speak, publicly,
and everyone knows it in the town.
Small town, and so even though you're just one of a number of senior guys being let go by a company opting for younger, cheaper talent, it still doesn't make it any easier to swallow when it happens to you. Suddenly you forget about statistics. This is you're talking about.
Right.
And so that's why in the work that I do now, when I talk about how some people have to go right into the abyss and be very, very comfortable with going into the darkness of the unknown, I'm speaking to that from very personal experience. And what happened to me is a very tiny crack in the door. You know, the door doesn't open wide. No, it's a tiny crack.
Yeah.
And it opened into the world of soft skills business training. I had no background, no experience, but I just kind of had a sense, you know what? I think I could do that. And more importantly, I'm intrigued by it. I'm fascinated by it.
So tell me about this crack. How did that appear? Because you went from devastation to this opportunity. So let's walk through this. Let's break down what made you actually step into considering something you said you would never do again.
Right. Well, what happened was the whole story is, and this is kind of like the Reader's Digest version, is because the company that I was working for really was on a cost cutting and a cleaning house mentality. I kind of, even before I knew about Who Moved My Cheese, I could see the writing on the wall. All right. Yeah. And a friend of mine one day said, "Hey, you should come to this event that I coordinate." She was running a program for startup businesses through the Business Development Bank of Canada. And I remember sitting in the back of the room watching some speaker. Ravi, I didn't even know the industry existed because for 20 years, I'm in a bubble. I'm in a broadcast booth. I'm in a TV studio. It was the only world I knew.
You and your microphone.
That's it. That's all I knew. And I remember that night at the Lion Senior Citizen Center on St. George Boulevard, sitting back there thinking, I don't know what I'd talk about, but I think I could do that. And then long story is after the dismissal and the ousting and all of that, I had come across an opportunity through a group that's now defunct. It was the Canadian Training and Development Group. And I just thought that was interesting. And I think it was a combination of the challenge And the fact that I had experimented just a little bit with facilitation and training.
How had you done that now?
Pardon me?
How had you done that? Where had you done that?
Oh, I created, I would get asked from time to time to do media training. So because I had worked the other side of the newsroom for so long, I kind of knew some of the do's and don'ts of and the mistakes people make when they're doing media interviews, but also the opportunities that they have and how to engage with a reporter. So I had done a little bit of that, but it was very ad hoc. But nevertheless, that kind of whetted the appetite to explore where I could go in the training and development field. So, it's like anything, right? From the late 90s, early 2000s, and training and development, and I got very familiar with the world of psychometric assessments, and one thing led to another, and probably the biggest turning point was in 2002, and it's still my signature story. I met a guy, and this is really where I owe my entrepreneurial roots to, because I think if I understand the nature of your question, Ravi, and the essence of what this is all about, where do the entrepreneurial roots really?
Where did the passion come from?
Where does it come from? And I met a guy in 2002, so I'm into the business. I'm just really scratching and clawing for every buck and every opportunity and just trying to learn. And in 2002 in Fredericton, I met a guy, his name is Jim, and everything changed when I met Jim Gilbert. Okay. And he had 5 employees, and he was doing about $1.5 million a year, small mom and pop family business, interchangeable product, highly competitive category. And that's when Jim came up to me. I was doing a speaking event at the Fredericton Chamber of Commerce, and he wanted to know if he and I could work together to grow his small business.
And at this point, the speaking that you were doing and training was really not really focused, right? It was in a number of areas.
Oh, you take any gig you could get.
Yeah,
exactly. When you're starting out,
I can teach you about that. I can train that.
You want something on customer service? By golly, I think we can do that, or whatever the thing was, because you had to stay alive. Mm-hmm. You had to pay bills, and you said yes to everything, and then whatever it is you said yes to, you made sure you did a crash course and learned something so you can go in and be somewhat intelligent on the subject. And so, but when I met Jim, that is when it really changed. And because what happened was he had this, like I said, this very, very small business. Mm-hmm. But he really believed, and that's such a big point. And I know, Ravi, you've probably already experienced a ton of this in your work and your clients. There's a certain thing to be said for levels of belief.
Absolutely.
And when people get to a certain level of belief, there's nothing that's going to move the needle on that, because you believe it so deeply.
Yep.
And my own belief was solidified by who became the best client ever and one of my best friends is Jim Gilbert, because what happened, we started in 2002. And did I mention he's in the worst product service category in the world? Did I tell you that?
You missed that little point.
I missed that point. Yeah. Ravi, he's in the worst product service category in the world when it comes to public perception and reputation. Jim Gilbert sells used cars. And so what? Even my first reaction, I can still remember. He sells used cars. And so we went and we started working with at the time, like I said, there was only 5 full-time people and maybe a part-timer or 2. Mm-hmm. And we would do sales training and customer service training at his little dealership. But Jim was really committed, and he really believed in developing soft skills, and he believed deeply in personal and professional development. And he thought it would be great to have someone basically in his backyard, Moncton to Fredericton, to help him and his little team grow that way. And we just kept working at it and working at it and working at it. And the breakthrough came in 2006 when we had the epiphany whereby we recognized that everything we were doing in terms of the marketing was basically like everybody else. And we basically stumbled onto an idea that was so powerful, we didn't even know how powerful it was at the time. And we didn't change the product. We didn't change the prices. We changed the story. And when we changed the story in September of 2006, man, it's been just an unbelievable ride. So
what was the essence of that, of changing? Because you said it was his passion that got you fired up. And what was the essence of it that changed that? Because everyone knows the stereotype of the used car, and I worked in broadcasting as well, honestly. So
right.
When you mentioned that, the image that came up actually from broadcasting is the old WKRP in Cincinnati, right. Herb Tarlick,
right?
Which totally fit the stereotype of the used car. So how did you shift that? What was that essence that changed the story?
Yeah, the story. Well, what happened was I had gone to. I went on a bit of a journey and an exploration, another leap into the unknown, if you will. And I went to this place called Wizard Academy. It's a 30-acre campus, 20 minutes outside of Austin, Texas. And I came back from that experience, and that's really when I told Jim Gilbert, I said, I think this is really worth exploring, because the philosophy on how marketing works is very, very different. And so, long story short, Jim and I went back in July. We worked with a great Wizard of Ads partner named Ray Segrin, and we came back and boom, launched in September of 2006 with a series of radio ads. And Jim Gilbert became Canada's huggable car dealer. And when he became the huggable car dealer, Ravi, that's when things just really started to move. People talk about change all the time. You've been around a lot of professional speakers and consultants, and everyone talks about change. No, this really changed because the story was hitting people, the audiences, at a very primal level. Within just a few weeks, complete strangers are going out of their way to go up to Jim and give him a hug at coffee shops and the grocery store and the hockey games. We ran ads that never talked about cars. And it was so different just hearing those ads. He's the Casanova of customer focus. He's the Romeo of roadsters. By golly, he's been called the McDreamy of drive. Stop by at Jim Gilbert's and get your daily dose of Hugtonium, designed to improve your love affair with your car and your libido. Whoa! No one had ever heard stories like that.
Yeah.
And so when you juxtapose those types of stories against the typical car ad, you can see massive differentiation. But in no way did we anticipate what has happened. So Huggable as a brand turns 14 years old this September, and that business has grown from very, very small, tiny, humble beginnings to, like, as of last year, there were 38 employees and they did north of 50 million in revenue. It's a juggernaut, largest independent used car dealer in all 4 Atlantic Canadian provinces. And I could go on and on. It's like if Walt Disney was to picture a used car lot, this is what it looks like, because he's got hundreds of mascots, teddy bears, and merry-go-rounds. And what it did for me is it really became a laboratory where Jim and I together, we could experiment on some highly counterintuitive things that felt right, even though they violated all the marketing rules.
Right. Now, the thing is here, it's one thing to have the huggable car dealer, and you're working with Jim and you leveraged his personality, okay?
Right.
But when you're talking 38 people, you've built a significant enough sized organization. There's a culture.
Mm-hmm.
A culture, a lot of people, you toss that word around. It's just the way you do stuff, right?
Right.
And really that's the brand. And it is driven by leadership. So how do you engender that when it's going from just Jim and a handful to now 38 people living that brand?
Well, you just hit the magic word. It is leadership. Great brands are built by leaders, not the other way around.
Yeah.
It's brand by itself as a discipline. And this is what I teach when I'm invited to speak with CEO groups all over North America and even into parts of Europe, is that, it's great leaders that build what becomes eventually legendary brands. It's not the marketing department. It just isn't.
Yeah.
And so from a cultural point of view, what I know what they do from experience at Jim Gilbert's, the hug is not just the literal and physical hug. Hug is very metaphorical.
Right.
And so that means the hug it represents metaphorically those things where you go the extra mile to take care of the customers. Everything there is always about taking care of people and doing right by people. Huggable is the poetic way to express that.
They need to feel hugged even on the web page when they go.
Exactly. So
everything has to live.
Everything's got to line up. That the huggable, in effect, becomes the North Star, or the sun for the solar system. Well, you're a rocket scientist. You would be able to weigh in on that with much more expertise than myself. But that's the point. It's the thing around which everything revolves.
So how do you engender that in these 38 people? So it's where they come from with the thoughts they do. Because I've worked with different organizations in this area too, but I'm curious your take on it. How do you engender it so it comes naturally from within all of those people?
Well, I mean, first of all, it's demonstrated from the top with Jim and Donna. And Jim and Donna are 40 years into business, and they just celebrated their 40th anniversary last August. I was there to see it. More than 2,000 people showed up just for their 40th anniversary, which is unheard of. And so their son and daughter, Chelsea and Alex, and son-in-law Rob, they're now representing the next wave of keeping the huggable torch alive. What it does, I'll tell you one practical thing it does, is it serves as a great filter for hiring. So if you're not already a kind-hearted, generous of spirit person, chances are you're not going to work out at a place like that.
Yeah. And
if someone does slip through that doesn't really align with those values, it's not long before they're on to someplace else. But so put it this way. You know how they say actions are more powerful than words?
Totally.
As I listen to your question. Well, in 2018, Jim and Donna expanded the business and they got into power sports with lines like Kawasaki. Through this recent COVID-19 situation, you can imagine small mom and pop family business, even though they've grown, they've got real issues.
Yeah.
If you can think back to those very uncertain days in the middle of March, right?
Totally.
And okay, so how many small businesses do you know in Canada or anywhere in North America that, as of 2 weeks ago, gave all their employees a $2,000 raise? Because Jim and Donna and the management team wanted to show great appreciation for the employees who've stuck through this and worked day and night to make sure they were on solid footing through the course of the pandemic. Yeah. It's like anything. The greatest brands in the world, and this is part of what I teach, are built from the inside out, and it's got to reflect and capture the spirit of the culture, and then it's up to leadership and management to uphold those values in daily actions and behaviors.
Yeah.
No one said it was easy, but it can be done. But it can be done. It really can be done.
So how have you taken what you learned with Jim into your own business?
Well, that's a great question, because what I think I mentioned earlier, Huggable became kind of a lab for a few years. And then what happened, Ravi, when we saw this going on, my experience as a journalist just instinctively took me into, well, how does that, why does that work that way? How do we deconstruct that? So, And then in 2010, I wrote my first book, but and I'm still proud of my first book because, hey, it's your first book and you did something. You got a book out there. But to be fair, it was more of a collection of short stories. And so, but over time, and it didn't happen overnight, but it did happen over time. It allowed me to develop some original theories on how do you create irresistible magnetic brands, no matter what category you're in. When people talk brand, they usually talk about Apple and Nike and Disney and Harley Davidson and Ferrari. And I'm going, well, wait a second, who are the smaller, medium-sized companies that have exerted that same kind of magnetic force? Because oftentimes when people speak on this subject, they hear Apple or they hear Amazon, they go Starbucks, and they think, there's no way I can do that because they're resourced to do it. They've got so much at their disposal. But every great brand started small. They all started small, every single one of them.
Starbucks was one store.
One store, exactly. And so what I've been able to do is deconstruct all the common principles that explain why someone small packs this huge punch in the marketplace, basically to get customers and traffic and talent to come to them. So one of the stories I like to tell lately is I met because you're the sole engineer. I was invited to work with a group out of Cincinnati. And you got to picture this, Ravi. They're engineers. Now, what are the instant stereotypes that you would associate with engineers?
The lab coats and the pen holders and all that.
Exactly. And so I love telling this story because first of all, their name is the Clankers Group, after Jim Clankers, their CEO. There's about 120 employees. They're into civil engineering, land surveying, transportation engineering. Like, this is high left brain engineering stuff. And when I met Jim, he invited me down to work with his team because if you can picture, they're based in Cincinnati, never mind small town Atlantic Canada, Cincinnati, Ohio. How many engineering firms?
Oh,
do you
dozens.
think there are?
Dozens.
Well, and expand the market. Go Ohio, Kentucky, Indiana, that tri-state area.
Hundreds.
You're into hundreds and hundreds. And this is the question for anyone watching. This is the ultimate question. Why would I pick that group of engineers over all the other engineering firms? That's it? And it's a universal question. And so part of what we discovered is when you can step into your own story, discover your own truth, then it doesn't matter what anyone else does.
Right.
So with the Clankers Group, I had dinner with Jim the night before. We do these one-day off-site boot camps, 1 or 2 day boot camps to really get the management team together. I put them through a bunch of exercises. They're uncovery exercises to figure out what's really at the core here. What are their real values? Not the mission statement crap on the wall or on a website. Who are they for real beyond the products and services? And so at dinner with Jim the night before, geez, I found out his favorite 4-letter word. It was beer. The guy loves beer. Okay. He's a beer drinker. See, he's a beer drinker. He's not a wine connoisseur. And then the next day when I go to the boot camp and I put these folks of his through all these different exercises and workshops, and I discover they're a quirky bunch. They remind me of the cast of characters from that TV show Cheers.
Okay.
And then I look at, in their new building, they've got their own pub. In their own brand new building, they got their own pub. Sharky's North Park Tavern. So you start connecting all the dots and they become, are you ready for it? Clankers Group, good at math, surprisingly human. Here's my point. When you know deep down you're good at math and surprisingly human, how many stories can you tell that can leverage that sort of springboard to jump into the storytelling pool? I always teach it's like Nike. Nike has a story told in 3 words since 1988. What's the Nike story in 3 words?
Let's do it.
Right. Have they ever changed it? No, never changed it. So Nike's just do it. And how many stories have they told? So Michael Jordan, and then Bo Jackson, and then LeBron and Kobe, Serena, Colin Kaepernick. It goes on and on and on. And every story goes through. It's different things, whether it's video or a photograph. And where does it land? Boom.
Just do it.
Just do it. Would you believe that's exactly the same philosophy we adopted with Canada's huggable car dealer? Everything ends with 4 magic words. Our philosophy is you only got 2 to 6 words to really make a ding in the universe. That's all you got. But once you know those words and they've got some drama and some flavor and some savoir-faire and a little bit of gravitas, and if they are rooted in who you are and they resonate with timeless, universal human values, I think we could tell those stories forever. So Clankers Group, good at math, surprisingly human. The thing that makes me most proud / impressed is they're doing in-house a number of unbelievable videos.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they've become, in effect, their own publishing company. So picture, just with your imagination, Ravi, picture the roundabout engineer who explains how to drive a roundabout while driving in a roundabout. And him and his sidekick are going around, and it's about a 3-minute video, and the sidekick's getting really tired with it, but the roundabout engineer is just extolling all of the great statistics. So it reduces fatalities by 80% as opposed to most intersections, blah, 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 blah. Good at math, surprisingly human, allows them storytelling runway that goes from basically here to eternity. That's
right, so people get an emotional connection to them. They're not
bingo.
Just engineers.
Because the language of brand, if you're really going to dig into it, it's not logo, it's not graphic design. That's got nothing to do with it. But the language of brand, what I've come to experience and know firsthand, it is by definition metaphorical, meaningful, emotional, symbolic. Language of business is logical, linear, analytical, rational, factual. They're 2 different languages. Yeah. And the secret to me, and the challenge right now for any industry leader anywhere, is to become fluent in both of those vitally important languages.
Okay. So tell me something. Right now, this time, last 3 months, has been really turning things inside out.
Right.
There's a lot of business owners who are, they've had shut down or severely pulled back. And they're going, I can't do things anymore. I can't, the way I've always done it, it just won't work.
Right.
What are your thoughts, your advice for the business owners who are there going, I can't do what I do. How do I work in this new normal?
Yeah, well, we're very fortunate because for us, and I'm almost embarrassed to say it, I feel a little bit of that survivor's guilt. Like, we've become busier than ever.
Yeah.
Like, okay.
Totally get that.
Because fundamentally, because all of our services are geared towards long-term strategic brand thinking and planning and figuring things out from a very, very high level, what's happened is a lot of people who've been putting this off are saying, wait a second, this is the time to get really good at building our brand strategy for decades to come.
Right.
Because we've actually got time right now to work on the business. Because, any entrepreneur knows either you learn it the hard way or you can learn it the easy way. You're either going to work on the business or you're going to work in the business. Right. And if all you're ever doing is working in the business and you can never work on it, you're never going to have any sense of freedom or accomplishment because you'll always feel trapped. That's classic E-Myth Revisited. Do they ever talk about the E-Myth Revisited on this show, Ravi?
Oh, yeah. We bring it up all the time.
I still think it's the Bible for any small to medium-sized business. So that being said, to answer your question, I think there's two words that form the umbrella for everything.
Okay.
Okay. And the two words are digital fluency. And here's what I mean by digital fluency. I think it has to do with three very distinct areas of any business. So this is universal across the board. I was about 10 days into COVID because, of course, when COVID hit, I never forgot. I was in March 12th. March 12th. I was in Charlotte, North Carolina, speaking to a group of executives, and it did feel a little bit surreal, right?
Yeah.
And so those first few days, you're really trying to figure out historically, where does this line up and where has this happened? Well, wait a second. We learned a new word back then, unprecedented, right? How many times,
Oh, Lord.
if you had a nickel or a dime for every time you heard unprecedented, you'd be rich. So about 10 days in, I started to take stock and reflect on what this meant for everyone. And so when I saw it through the lens of digital fluency, that made everything we did and everything we do with our clients very, very simple. Digital fluency, there's three areas. Number one, delivery. Delivery. Can you deliver your products and services, your goods, your offerings to your customer? Do you have a delivery mechanism? For us, it was Zoom. Okay. For other companies, it's their supply chain in terms of, like, Amazon has no problem with customer fulfillment. Yeah. Okay. So Jeff Bezos is not sweating this out at all. So delivery. Number two, operations, meaning internal operations. No longer can you run a company of any size, as I say, putting things on a scratch pad or leaving it in the Penske file for someone named George to pick up. That's not going to work. Okay. Everything. We're going through this massive shift ourselves internally, Ravi, to make sure everything is moving through digital, seamlessly through digital platforms, right? Because you're going to waste too much time. Mm-hmm. And number three is marketing. So delivery, operations, marketing. How digitally fluent are you with your marketing? And if you are still, and I just blogged about this actually a couple days ago, if you are still marketing with 20th century strategies on 21st century, if you're still doing just one way push driven marketing, if you think everything is the language of the pitch and you don't recognize that it's shifted dramatically, and I think marketing has shifted more in the last 3 months, Ravi, than in the last 10 years. Okay, I think it's
how so?
Tell me. Significant.
Tell me how so.
Well, it's what we're doing right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what are we doing right now? We're just having a conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's never been a better time to build your brand, and the only place you can build it now is in the online world.
Right.
What other world is there? Who else do you know that's got truckloads of money to go buy expensive TV ads? Like, the world of small to medium-sized businesses, which is primarily the audiences that we're talking to on platforms such as this, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, we're not the Fortune 100. No, this is the world. The phone is now the world. Everything happens on the phone.
You know, it's interesting you say that, because I mean, when I was in broadcasting, I wasn't on air. I was in the sales and marketing side, right? And then I moved to head office. And I used to justify why, you know, with the numbers, why they should be buying our ads, so on. But I think it has been a couple of decades since the traditional ads, broadcast, print. Yeah. People have still been buying that. But honestly, I don't think they have any effect. They're just buying it because they've always bought it. And I don't think they've worked for 20 years.
They haven't. And Ravi, I could go on and on and on about how so primarily everything changes because of the phone, And because of the platforms, for example, like you and I are actually demonstrating it because the whole world has shifted to video. And unless you get really good on video, and video itself means all kinds of different forms of video, you're going to be left behind.
Totally.
Like this ship has sailed. The only question is whether, for anyone watching, are you going to be on the ship? Otherwise, you're going to be left behind at the deserted island and no one's coming back to get you. And no, but I'm sorry. I don't like it to
That's
be
the reality.
But that's the reality.
So you can't say it shouldn't be this way. It's irrelevant.
That's irrelevant. And, and I remember it was, can I do my Ravi Tangri shout out right now?
Sure.
Okay. So just,
I'm not sure what it is, but
well, it's just this acknowledgement, Ravi, that, people don't know, like you're kind of a big deal in the Canadian Association of Professional Speakers, right? And you hobnob and associate with the very best of the best. That being said, I remember, including our friend Martin Latulippe,
yes,
who got me to go to the Halifax convention in 2015, and I did a breakout session on the subject of video. And I was only at the time, I think 4 or 5 months into my own video publishing. But even back then, I could see that not just our industry, but every industry was going to have to adapt to this phenomena. And now, whether you like it or not, in my view, you are a media company first, and you're a car dealership second, or you're an engineering firm second, or you're a professional speaker second. You're running a media company. That's why tactically it's you and I on a platform called StreamYard, but strategically Ravi Tangri is running a media company. This happens to be one of his shows on the network.
Right.
And that's a whole different mindset when you see yourself, no matter how big or how small you are, as a media company. And that strategically is a mindset that is very, very slow in terms of its adoption rate. But to the winners go the spoils of victory.
Right. And the thing is, there's a lot of people that are going, oh, I can't do that. They're self-conscious. It's like, we have to do what we have to do to get over ourselves.
Yes. Yeah, which goes back to belief. Whether I've still loved that Henry Ford quote. The Henry Ford quote. Whether you think you can or think you can't,
you're right.
You're right. And the same is true here, right?
Totally.
Hey, can we do something for fun just for a second?
Sure.
I've been dying to ask you this.
Oh dear. All right.
No, I
have. A turn.
I thought about, I gave it some thought. Like, what am I going to do? Ravi's the rocket scientist. So I didn't know what, I know a little bit. I know, you've got a background with, I think you were educated at Western here in London, Ontario. Is that right?
That was in business, but yeah, I did.
Okay, which is a pretty prestigious university.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you pull back on the screen, just I've been dying to ask you this question. Can you see that?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do you prefer, Star Wars or
easy.
Star Trek?
Star Trek all the way, man.
Really?
Totally.
See, I didn't know that. I didn't know whether to have the characters from Star Wars ready or Kirk and Spock. So you're telling me this is the winner.
Oh, totally Star Trek. But I'm loving the newer shows. I like the original. I'm a Niner, and I love the new ones they've got, Discovery and Picard.
Really?
Yeah.
Now, what is it about Star Trek that makes it, from a rocket scientist point of view, that makes it more appealing intellectually, let's say?
Like, I enjoy Star Wars, but Star Trek is, the reason, I'll tell you, the reason the shows that I like the most of them, Deep Space Nine, Discovery, Picard, the characters are so much richer. Like, all the Star Trek shows have 7 main characters, right? But Deep Space Nine, with its supporting cast, has like 30 characters. It's so rich. And that last 5 years was one long arc. And just to see, so that getting into the people.
Now you're the soul engineer. Did Spock have a soul?
Absolutely.
That's a deeper question, isn't it? Because he was this ramrod straight guy, but you think Spock had a soul.
Well, if you get geeky enough, it's called the Katra, my friend.
Oh, is it really? See,
the Vulcan soul.
That's why we're doing this program.
Yeah. So yeah, that's but yeah, I mean, Star Wars is fun, but I find there's so much more that actually is intellectually challenging with Trek, and the stories. They bring the issues of today out.
Right.
And you know, they dealt way back with the original series. They put racism. They had an alien that was black on the left and white on the right, arguing with an alien that was white on the left and black on the right. You know, and they were racist about each other to bring it out in a time when you couldn't talk about it.
And which was very like avant-garde and leading edge at the time, which
Yeah.
which I think is what the future is for us right now. Not to take you all off track, but that's part of, I guess, what we're talking about, isn't it, Ravi? That we are now both medium and the message.
Yes.
Marshall McLuhan years ago, I think in the 1960s, coined the phrase, the medium is the message, because it was like if you were on TV, basically you made it.
But it's so much more now. Like you're right. When you bring the brand element into it, the medium is the message.
Yeah. And now anyone in business. So again, for whoever's watching, entrepreneurship to me now has the level went up, because you've got to be more than a merchant. Mm-hmm. Being a merchant is so 20th century. You know what I mean by being a merchant? And God love all the merchants who've done this for so long. And it's a thankless, you know, heroic job. But the days of being assured of a future by being a merchant, just by doing a product or service and marking up the price and based on a physical location,
you're a commodity.
You're a commodity, and you're at high risk. And we're part of the language we're adopting now, Ravi, is how do you pandemic proof a business? They used to talk about, well, how do you recession proof a business? Now we've got another very real thing to think about, which is how do we pandemic proof? And in my view, like we said earlier, digital fluency in those three key areas is, to me, that's kind of like where this thing is going and will be for some time.
And this is not a short-term thing. Like, even if they do come up with a vaccine, and honestly have to say if, right? Because we don't have one for SARS yet. They've been working it. But if we do, let's say this, you know, there could easily be another pandemic in a few years. This is not one and done. So we have to realize that this is something we may be living with for the foreseeable future.
Which is why, have you become familiar with the Stockdale paradox? Which is I think it's a great illustration of how entrepreneurs need to be thinking right now. And in a short form, the Stockdale paradox goes back to he was the highest ranking U.S. prisoner captured during the Vietnam War. And Admiral James Stockdale, I believe his name was. And basically the Stockdale paradox was what he identified as the difference between POWs who made it and those who didn't.
I do remember this.
And the gist of it was, I might be off a little bit on my facts, but the gist of the story was that you gotta plan for the worst and hope for the best. And so how does that translate into entrepreneurship in the year 2020, when we've got the global pandemic, we got social unrest, we've got more challenges coming, there could be a second wave. In other words, you can't just hope that, we're going to hang in there, there's going to be a vaccine, and by Labor Day, everything's going to be opened up and blah. No, you got to plan for the worst, but still hope for the best.
Yeah.
But plan for the worst.
Right. You're not planning for that happening, the best.
Get your ducks in a row.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that in essence, anyone can Google it and look up the Stockdale paradox, but that in effect, I think, is the wisest course of action from an entrepreneurial point of view that anyone could be taking right now.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I think that's a beautiful spot to bring this together on, Gair. And if people are looking for you, this is the best place to track you down.
Oh, it's the place, and I'm pretty easy to find on YouTube. We've got a very active YouTube channel, and LinkedIn, and of course Facebook. But yeah, the website. The great thing about the spelling of my name, Gair, is we don't need to spend a nickel on Google for SEO or anything optimization.
You're right there.
I'm the only one that comes up. So, you know, Mom, God rest her soul, she had it planned out, you know, very, very well back in 1961.
She knew branding.
She knew it.
Well, Gair, thank you so much for joining me. Truly, absolutely a delight, always.
Well, it is as well. And I had to say, you know, Ravi, I just hope that somehow we did a conversational dance like the way you storm and are legendary for dominating the dance floor at whatever post-game reception or post-conference reception that you happen to grace with your presence, my friend.
Well, thank you, sir, and thank you for gracing us with yours. And we will be back on Monday. And as I said I'm doing it every weekday in June, we're actually going to carry it through next week just to finish off the week. So every weekday, this was a special time, but we will be here at noon Eastern, 1 o'clock Atlantic time with amazing entrepreneurs all through next week. Have yourselves a great day, a great weekend. And thank you, Gair, for joining me.
All the best, and you have a great weekend too. Thanks, Ravi.
You as well.